Hey everyone, Eran Stern here with a very exciting holiday tutorial. Today we'll go through the creation of short lively blossom title animation for the coming holidays. In my case it's Passover, but you can easily switch it to Easter, Spring, or even Independence Day. Whatever is festive for you. Well, not really Independence Day, but all the other options I mentioned would really work great. Here, take a look at a preview of the final animation and see why. Oh yes, my love, we are in a romantic mood today. Another flower power lesson is on its way. This lesson is mostly based around trapcode particular, but as you've seen, we are not going to create sparks, smoke, or sand. Instead, we'll use this plugin to create a snake full of moving flowers. When I say it like this, it does sound ridiculous, but as you've seen, I think it will be quite useful. Now, because I want to concentrate on the sophisticated parts, especially those which involve the usage of the particular plugin, I won't start this one from scratch, but rather try to walk you through the first steps I already did earlier. From there, we will continue onward. So here we are with my open composition called Blowing Flowers. This comp name implies of this nice lady's profession. Oh yes guys, due to the economic recession, everyone discovers a hidden talent and uses it in order to bring some food to the table. Now, of course, I'm only joking again. This HD clip is part of a product called Crowd Control, a library of 45,000 clips all pre-keyed with alpha channel, ready to use in your own project as well. You can read more details about this wonderful collection at allbetsareoff.com. I highly recommend it. Okay, back in our composition, I've converted this layer to a 3D layer and place it at the edge of the comp. Behind it there's also paper texture layer, which is also a 3D layer. This background layer will help to emphasize the holiday spirit. To me it looks like something you might use to warp your gifts with, but at the same time it also contributes to the clean design I'd like to achieve here. As you can see in the timeline, there's also a shape layer I used to create the shadow on the floor. This is a simple ellipse with blur on top of it, and I've placed it under the girls to act like the shadow layer. Above all, there's a light and a camera presence. Now, I've turned the accept lights off to all three layers because I don't want to use the light here as a regular light. Instead, I'll use its 3D position to drive particular emitter. More on that later on, but for now you can see that when I select the light in the comp, it already has a path on its 3D axis. You can view its course in the top view when I scrub the timeline. At the same time, in the right viewer, you can get a sense about the camera route as well. If I'll select both the light and the camera, you can see that I already animated the camera to track back from the point in time where this lady starts to blow a kiss, I guess, towards us. The camera and the light start to move from 1 second and 18 frames all the way until the end of the comp. You can also spot that I made an effort to keep the light in front of the camera for most parts. This way, when it will drive the emitter particular, particles will be always visible until 4 seconds or so when the light fly away to the right of the comp. Alright, so this is my basic setup, not a complex one and definitely not something to write home about. But the fun begins now, and this is where things start to bloom. Okay, I'm going to switch back to one view and stretch back the interface to show more room. Now we are ready to add our particular layer and create some magic. So go to Layer and choose to add a new solid. Name it particular and press OK. Next, go under Effect, Trap Code, and add the particular plugin. Now let's solo the layer for a moment so we can concentrate on the particles creation. Since I choose a white background to my comp, it's very difficult to see what's happening. So I'll go to Composition, Background Color, and change it to black for the moment. When I'll scrub my playhead, you can see that the default particles are in place and particular also reacts to the camera motion I already introduced in this comp. First thing I want to set here is the connection between particular emitter and the moving light. For that, let's open the emitter and change the emitter type to light. Most chances are that you'll also get this dialog warning which explains that you need to change the light name to emitter if you like to use this function. You can press OK, and instead of changing the light name, you can always press the Settings button here, and under Light Emitters, set the name to Light. This will tell Particular to look for a light that starts with the name Light, and when you press OK and move forward in the timeline, you can now see that our existing Light 1 will set the way of the emitter and move the particles to wherever it travels in 3D space. Well done! Now let's also press the solo button near the girl's clip, and you see that as soon as she blows, a series of little spheres are pushing away from her, swiveling around the screen until they disappear around 6 seconds. Now I must say that you can achieve the same particle movement using the regular point emitter, but I found it is much easier to control when you attach your emitter to a light and freely move it until you end up with a satisfying result. For the sake of time, as I showed you before, I already animated the light, so by attaching the emitter to it, we can move on to the particle section and design the particle look. Okay, so open up the particle section and let's define some custom particles here. Before doing so, I'll return for a moment to the project panel and double-click the flowers comp. Some of you might remember it from a previous tutorial I did about simple morphing using the time remap tool in After Effects. If not, you can always pause me now and go and watch it. It has nothing to do with this lesson, but it's also a fantastic trick which you might appreciate. Anyway, enough with this self-promotion and let's return to our flowers business here. This flower comp is actually 6 frames long and hosts 6 different still frames of flowers, all with transparent background. We'll use it as our custom particle in particular. For that, it needs to be present in our main comp. So return to the blowing flowers comp and drag the flowers comp and place it in the back. You can also turn off the eye for it, as we don't need to see it, just use its content. Next, reselect the particular layer, scroll down to particle and under particle type, set it to custom. Then open custom and define the flowers as the layer to be used. At this point, we can't see anything on the screen because the time sampling isn't correctly defined yet. So instead of current time, let's set it to random still frames. This option will grab a random frame from the custom layer and uses it throughout the particle's life. You can create a RAM preview just to check that everything is working. Oh great, but we do need to change few more settings to make it look more aesthetic. Okay, change the life random to 25%. This will yield a random life to some of the particles so they won't born and die in exactly the same time. Now set the rotation speed to 0.1. I like to set this to a very low value. This will animate over time and usually will be enough even with low numbers like this. Next, let's raise the size to say 25. Yes, this looks good, but we don't want it to be that high when she starts to blow. So I'll animate this value over time. On frame 1 and 22 frames, I'll set a keyframe with this value, 25. Then I'll move back 4 frames and zero it out. And another ramp review shows us that we are on the right track, but still need more fine tuning. So under size, set the size random to 50%, which randomizes the size of the flower and makes it more interesting. Last step here is to open the size over life and draw a fade curve at the end. This will tell the particles once they reach the end of their life to be scaled down. Let's create another ramp preview and check it again. And yes, it looks much better. You can watch how the snake-shaped movement of the light emitter is spreading the particles all over and really brings the smell of spring into our comp. Don't you agree? Don't you feel like the spring is here? Well, I do. Okay, I think we might want more flowers than what we have until now. So move up and under emitter, raise the particles per second to maybe 500. If we're here, let's also change it to be a directional kind, which will represent the light movement better and also give it more velocity, maybe 120. I'll also set the velocity random to 40 and the velocity from motion to 30. Okay, let's take another look and I'll generate another ramp preview for you. And it looks marvelous. I think we got it right there. Okay, let's go under composition and change our background color back to white. I will also release the solo switches and drag the particular layer under the camera in the light. You don't have to do it, this is just me with my compulsive ordering. I always like my camera to be at the top of the comp. Next up, I want to check that when the flowers are surrounding our blooming girl and filling the screen, she will disappear in the background. I already placed an opacity keyframes for her and for her shadow. I just want to double check that everything is still working for me. You probably know that when working with particles, it is very difficult to achieve the same look every time because particles tend to render slightly different each time you do it. So let's move the CTI to around 4 seconds. Select both the clip and the shadow layer and make sure that the flowers are covering them, and from this point they will be fading out. Excellent, I really like it. Now, before we wrap this part, I'd like to share with you 2 more features in particular which really makes it what it is. And that's of course the best particle engine for After Effects. Oh yes. So select the particular layer and enable motion blur for it as well as for the whole comp. Okay, see? Much better, huh? This is one of the filters that respects After Effects built-in motion blur, which to my opinion adds much more realism to the whole spot. If this isn't enough for you, let's also enable depth of field for a better realistic look. So scroll down and under render mode choose full render plus DOF smooth. This will generate a smooth depth of field which takes more time to render, but totally worth it, believe me. Now, in order to see it in the comp view, you need to make sure to enable the same feature for the comp camera as well. So double click on the comp camera and tick the depth of field checkbox and then press OK. As you can see, particles which are far away will be automatically blurred out as they are coming in and out of focus. And another RAM preview proves my point and speaks for itself. I think that now we have something which looks very promising, but before I let you off to celebrate your holiday, let's sum up this lesson with another trick. I want to reveal a text layer behind the flowers as they leave the screen. Okay, this is a little bit hard to explain, so I better show you what I mean instead of talking about it. So here goes. Return to the project panel and open up the text comp. Nothing fancy here, just a line of text that says, well, Happy Passover. This is what's coming up for me, of course, but you can write whatever you need here. I welcome you anyway to celebrate Passover with me. Just note that you can't eat any dough bread for a week. You must only eat matzahs, which is an unleavened bread made from flour and water only. Okay? I just thought that I should warn you. Anyways, if you are still with me, let's take this comp and place it in our main comp under our particular layer. I also drag it to start at 3 seconds and 20 frames. Now I'll move forward so we can see that we are almost there. Particles are covering it, but it's still a two-dimensional layer. In order for this layer to react in our scene, we need to convert it to a 3D layer as well. When we do so, the camera movement here will affect it and it will be a little bit difficult to control. So what I will do is also parent it to the camera. This will fix the unexpected motion because everywhere the camera goes, the layer now follow along. But since it is a child of the camera, I can also freely move it and reposition it wherever I like. Aha, a cool trick right there for you. Okay, so let's push this layer on the Z-axis to say 1300 pixels or so. This should place it nicely in the middle of the screen. We might also want to scale it over time, so at 3 seconds and 20 frames where we are now, I will set a scale keyframe with a value of 50% and then go to the end of the timeline and raise it to 130%. I will also select both keyframe and hit F9 to ease the motion between them. Note that the text layer still reacts to the overall camera motion and we do have a nice animation in place, but it still doesn't look right yet. If I'll place the CTI at 5 seconds or so, you can see that particular doesn't respect the 3D position of it and all particles are being rendered on top of our text, although there are some particles which we know for sure that lives behind it. Let me show you what I mean by switching my view to custom view 1 and orbit around my scene until I find my text layer here. Now you can see that many particles are indeed appearing behind our text in 3D space, but as soon as I switch back to active camera, we see that all particles are being rendered in front of it. So what gives? Who's to blame? What happened? Is this one of the 10 Passover plagues? Not really. It's just another important feature that we do need to remember to enable inside the particular plugin. So go ahead and select our particular layer again, scroll down and open up visibility. And for the obscuration layer, set it to text. And that's it, it's being taken care of for you. Particular will now respect the 3D position of our text and will render the particles as expected. Scroll back few frames to verify it, and yes, it is indeed the fixer we were looking for. And that's it guys, this is the point of time when I say go to the first frame, make sure you're seeing the full resolution, press on the tilde key and generate a final render for this comp. So, whatever you are celebrating, I really hope it will be a great holiday. Passover, Easter, spring or summer, every moment in life is precious. Even minor events like this, when hopefully you're learning something new, calls for a happy gesture. So keep on smiling, and until next time we'll meet, I hope you let 1,000 flowers bloom your way. This is Eran Stern for CreativeCow.net saying goodbye.